Jai Guru.
Jai Guru. The 14th day after of the lunar month is always Shivaratri. It is the day before the new moon. It is the no moon day, Amavasya. It is a day of complete darkness. MahaShivaratri happens around this season of the year. It's always February or March, never any other time. MahaShivaratri, the yogis understood, is a day of extraordinary potential and extraordinary ability to raise the Kundalini Shakti or to raise the internal energy. Naturally, during this time, the whole northern hemisphere at least, the energy is surging. Now, when we say energy is surging, it doesn't mean that only your internal bioenergy or your Kundalini Shakti is moving. It also means that whatever is that transformative Shakti, whatever is that transformative force, it is available that day more than any other day. The only other day that compares to it is Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima. Diwali and all have different sort of vibrations, but in terms of what a person in yoga can access to transform themselves, these are the two most powerful days. Today, in fact, perhaps more than Guru Purnima, because today is directly connected with Shiva. Now, the word Shiva is a somewhat strange word. It's a somewhat strange word because we think it means a god who lives in the Himalayas, who rides a bull, is married, has two children. That's the mythological aspect of Shiva. In yoga, in the sadhana, in the yoga sadhana, in the Kundalini paths, Shiva actually means that which is auspicious. The word Shiva literally means that which is auspicious, and in the yogic tradition, the word Shiva means auspicious consciousness. Because the Kundalini traditions, the meditative traditions, the Vedantic traditions, they know that the substratum, the foundation of the universe is actually consciousness. So when they say Shiva, you can access Shiva today, they mean that you can access a certain vibration, you can access a certain aspect of consciousness, you can access a certain zone of possibility. That has been crystallized in rupa. Rupa means form, which is the form of Shiva, whatever. What we'll talk today is about how the Siddha Yogis of South India, they realize that all that is well and good, but the normal average person needs something to engage with. They need a form, they need something that they can relate to. So they created forms for you to engage with and to use those forms to transform yourself. But it is very well understood that the source or the force or the Shakti or the ultimate dimension is not a person, it is Shiva. It is being, it is not in any sense personal, it is impersonal, it is without gender, it is without form, it is without name, it is without time, it is transcendent. So Shivaratri is the day when the chances of a normal ordinary person accessing that zone is heightened. It's not like it is not available at other times of the day, but because of the certain planetary positions, because of certain other reasons, it is easier today than any other time. So when we say Shiva, we must understand that we are not talking about a person per se, even though most of the talk will be about the forms, because it's all very well. In the beginning, the only way they would allow you to engage with that transformating energy was the Shivalingam. They used to create the Shivalingam here. This is a very small Shivalingam. Same thing. Whether it is small or large, it is the same thing. A small Shivalingam has a problem in that you cannot activate chakras in that. Whereas if you have a larger size Shivalingam, you can create the energy body of a fully enlightened person within that. So you have none of the human problems, none of the human behaviors, none of the human limitations, and you can still get all the benefits you would have got from going to a master. That is the purpose of a Shivalingam. So in the beginning they created a Shivalingam so that Shivalingam literally means what? Sign of Shiva. It does not mean male generative organ, that is later. Lingam actually means chinna, sign. It is the sign of Shiva. So yogis knew that certain places this energy has been created in a certain way that we can go there, and if we are in the sadhana, if we are doing our process, we can draw the energy from there. Then even that became difficult. Even to draw the energy from the Shivalingam became difficult because people became less prone to sadhana because the culture changed, the society changed. Up to about 1,000 years back, the major forms of worship used to be Atma Vichara, which was self-inquiry, and mantra. And there was intense training. There were intense training in large schools, large universities, large temples, where hundreds of people, thousands of people would be doing mantra japa and they would be doing Atma Vichara and they would hit that zone of Shiva, whatever you wanted to call it. But because the culture was changing, because the money was not available, and because invasions were happening, Muslim invasions were happening, and all the temples were getting destroyed, the infrastructure was no longer present. The infrastructure was no longer present to transform people by Atma Vichara, by self-inquiry, and by the mental process or by the mantric process. So the yogis had to come up with new forms, and that is why the whole bhakti sort of flow of energy began, that where you can directly relate to a form, an aspect of God. You can see a God with 4 hands, 5 hands, various things in the hands, all of which are deeply symbolic, but it was still easier. It was still easier because the mantra process, the Atma Vichara process usually took time. And not only did it take time, it had another problem, that the person could not do anything else. The person had to be dedicated. The person had to live in the temple, which meant somebody had to take care of the food and clothes at least, which meant drain on resources. So sometime around 1,000 years back, the yogis realized that this situation cannot endure, and that is when the great wave of temple building began. Previously temples used to be built, but then they began to build even more temples, because now we needed, for the changed circumstances, where people could go and engage with a murti and engage with a form and draw the energy in. So there was a very distinctive cultural shift. It is not like the Atma Vichara and the mantric paths stopped, but they certainly lost their primacy, and a whole devotional path and a worshipful path and a ritualism path. And more importantly, what happened was they started designing sadhanas, they started designing spiritual processes which were independent of rituals. This is probably the greatest thing that yoga did. You can't do the havan, your whole body is the havan kund. You can't do the mantra, your whole body is a mantra, your whole body vibrates. All you need is your body and your breath, and whatever you would do externally can be done internally. That shift is actually quite recent. Even though the technique was known, it was taught only under very controlled circumstances. But then, like I said, because the Atma Vichara path and the Mantra Japa path are actually more certain. It takes more time, but they're actually more certain. Whereas the paths of using asanas and the paths of using pranayama and the paths of using all those weird tantric rituals and things like that, while the results may be faster, they tend to derail people very strongly. But there was no choice. Because of the changed society, there was no choice. So that a new kind of aspect of relating to Shiva came up. A new kind of, and that's when the Puranas began to be written. The Puranas are not just entertaining stories. The stories are a great deal of fun. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of violence, a lot of adventure. But the Puranas are all symbolically written. What would previously be learnt through Atma Vichara, what would previously be learnt through Mantra Japa, now they have to literally write it out, and you have to engage with the stories and decode them. Some other time, some other talk. how to engage with the Puranas. So what the Siddha Yogis down in South India did was they created three aspects of Shiva. They created three forms of Shiva which were called Dakshinamurti, Nataraja and Kaala Bhairava. And by engaging with these three forms, a normal person can transcend the consciousness and hit that zone of Shiva. That was their great and grand and extraordinarily peculiar achievement. So you must understand, when we say we do yoga, what do we mean? When we do yoga, we are always seeking to enlarge and increase within us the component of Akasha Tattva. Akasha is called space or ether. Now, it's not the literal outer space, it's not the literal ether. It's a whole internal dimension vibration, it's a whole internal dimension reality, what we call Akasha. That is the foundation of the universe. In the yogic concept, the whole universe emerges from Akasha. As that becomes thicker, condensed, more difficult, it starts coming. It becomes fire, it becomes air, it becomes fire, it becomes water, it becomes earth. Now, these are called the tattvas. These are called what are called the great elements, earth, water, fire, air, space. Now, if you function from any one of the other elements or even a mixture of the other elements, there are always certain limitations to it. If you function predominantly from an earth element or an Akasha, a Prithvi Tattva as it is called, there are immediate issues with that. Because if you privilege the body, you then end up privileging bodily appetites. The things of the body, the needs of the body, the greeds of the body, all those things are privilege. So functioning purely from a Prithvi Tattva is a very, very dangerous game. It can be done, but a large reason why people like Swami Vivekananda used to make fun of asanas and hatha yoga. They used to call it, what is all this peculiar physical jerks? Because they understood that if you get too involved and think, then your consciousness get trapped in the Prithvi Tattva, in the Earth Tattva. Similarly, with the water is the emotions. Now, the problem with emotion. We had a whole wave of bhakti, devotional approach to God. But you know what happens then? They generally exceedingly silly people. Even though they have bhakti, but they are very gullible people. They are very credulous people. You have the mind. The air tattva. You have the people who are completely into books and completely into texts, and they argue and they wrangle and nothing. It's all mind games. In fact, that is one of the greatest dangers in yoga. You can become so powerful that you can start creating internal realities, and then you are God in that internal reality and you never come out of it. You just remain stuck in that internal reality where you're creating according to your whims and fancies. So the sense of getting delusional, though in many ways perhaps the air tattva is easier. And of course the creative tattva, fire, Kundalini, it has the where you work from the ki body or the energy body or the pranamaya kosha as we call it. That is actually quite helpful, and a lot of what we do in the 8 spiritual breaths and our processes are working from there. It does not have too many downsides that way, but people tend to become very intense. People tend to become very intolerant of nonsense and rubbish, or what they consider to be nonsense and rubbish. The person who is exclusively on a pranamaya path finds it very difficult to function and engage in society. So it has that downside. So the yogis decided very early on, they understood very early on that all processes that are done must increase the Akasha Tattva, because that is the foundation, that is, everything flows from there. And the more you function from your Akasha Tattva, the more there is Akasha Tattva within you and operating within you, the more integrated your life becomes, the more easy your life becomes, because then all the other parts fall into place. The body and the physical issues fall into place, the emotions fall into place, the mind falls into place, and the energy falls into place. So all yoga sadhana, whether people know it or don't know it, in the end the purpose of all yoga sadhana is increasing the Akashic Tattva. Those in the Arya Yoga Sangha know 3 times a day Akashic rituals. Yeah, we do it very consciously. We do it. It is one of the most ancient yogic practices. Normally, when you do a yogic practice, they always tell you that this rishi instituted it, this rishi founded it. This is so ancient, we don't even know who founded it. From that time, they knew that the Akashic Tattva, the way to increase the Akashic Tattva. So, please understand this. Whatever it is you are doing, whether you are doing puja, whether you are doing mantra, whether you are going someplace on pilgrimage, whatever it is you are doing, it is to hit that zone, that Shiva zone. You know, that Shiva is actually still more refined than the Akashic Tattva, but at least within the Akashic Tattva, if the Akashic Tattva has a form, if the Akashic Tattva can be captured in any way, that capture, that rupam would be Shiva. So the three forms that they created, they realized that, okay, you know, people cannot function purely from Tattva, they need guna, they need quality. You know, so the gunas, the Rajasic, Sattvic and Tamasic, which is the inertia one is the Tamasic, that is Kaala Bhairava. The Rajasic form is the Nataraja and the Sattvic form is the Dakshinamoorti. So I'll go through all of them, but there is a process. You see, the way it is approached is there is a process. This, for instance, is the first. This is Kaala Bhairava. He is always nude. Yeah, sorry, I didn't have a large murti. He's always nude. So you'll always see these two spheres, especially when you go to Chidambaram in the evening, they do the Abhishekam, and all you can see is his backside. He's always nude. He is what in the tarot, Sacred India tarot, he is our full card. You know, he's our zero card. He is the. Now, he also has, very interestingly, he has Jwala Mukata. His head is flames. So even though he is the tamasic version, he is a very fiery kind of thing, you know, and he has the Damru of Shiva, the aspect of Shiva, the cosmic sound, the Om, but it has got a cobra on it because it is a Damru that removes your karma. It is a Samharaka. Samharaka means that which removes the karma, and he also has this Trishul, the trident. Now you see, Shiva is actually not somebody with a Trishul. Shiva has got an axe, Shiva has a bow, Shiva has a dagger, a sword. The Trishul is always a symbol that Shakti is flowing in that place. A trident is always a symbol that there is, because these are actually Ida, Pingala, Sushmana. These are the three major nadis where Shakti flows. The lunar channel, the solar channel and the central channel. And enlightenment happens when the energy flows exclusively through the central channel. So all the people who carry the Trishul, they are actually carrying that as a sort of symbolic and ritualistic and magical implement, whatever you want to call it. But fundamentally the Trishul is not a symbol of Shiva. It is not even a symbol of Devi. It is not even a symbol of the goddess. It is an aspect that rupa or that temple, when you see this planted in front, this is where Kundalini Shakti flows. This is where the transforming force flows. This is something that has to do with the, so there is, it must be understood. Today, of course, it has become very popular to depict Shiva with the Trishul, but actually that's not right. Shiva, it's Kaala Bhairava who has that exactly like this. It's a short stabbing trident, you know, because he is a person who is completely without any kind of mercy for human limitations or human weakness. His whole purpose, his head is on fire, very literally. His head is very literally on fire. So arguing with him, why is he tamasic therefore? Tamas is, you know, not properly understood. Without tamas you couldn't live. Tamas is what holds you together. Tamas is what keeps your face the same every day, because your body has a certain memory and a body has a certain vibrational habit. So your flesh stays the same. Your voice stays the same. Your hair abandons you. But tamas is what enables continuity. Without that, everything would fall apart. So at an absolute heightened spiritual level, it is true that tamas is not good, but for most of existence, tamas is vital. People don't understand that. So you begin with the Kaala Bhairava, you see, because he is called Kaala Bhairava because when does manifestation happen? Manifestation always happens within time. Forms are always possible only in time. Human birth is possible only in time. He is the Lord of time, Kaala Bhairava. He is the Akashic Lord of time, which means all those people who tend to read Akashic records or say that they can figure out your future and all those things, whether it's true or not, if it is true, then it is Kaala Bhairava's blessing. And he is always an outsider. He will never be in the main temple. He will always be in the corner somewhere. Because first deal with these issues before going to the main temple. Don't leave these aspects of life. Don't leave all the difficult aspects of life, all the problematic aspects of life. Don't pretend, don't deny that they don't exist, which is what most of us do. We directly go to God and then we are, gimme. And a Shivalingam, it's very difficult for a Shivalingam to give. A Shivalingam can usually take. If you go and say, okay, remove this karma from me, it's easy. It's very difficult for a Shivalingam to give. So this person can gimme. So always at the corner. If that is why you're coming to the temple, if that is why you're coming to the Kshetram. Now the word Kshetram is very, very important in yoga. Because Kshetram means field, but what field does it mean? It means a zone where something vibrates. It means a field of transformational possibility. It means a field of evolutionary possibility, which is why temples are called Kshetrams. If you really go to a fully energized temple, some switch is thrown in you and you are never again the same person. If you really go to a powerful place, some switch is thrown in you. So it is a Kshetram, it is a field. He is known as Kshetrapala. He is the protector. He is the upholder of the Kshetram. And which is the greatest Kshetram in yoga? The human body is the greatest Kshetram in yoga. There is no sacred place, there is no sacred temple in which is not find its analog in the human body. So when we are working, especially in the early days of our sadhana, the early days of our process, the early days of whatever it is we are doing, whether we know it or not, since we are all aiming for Shiva, Kaala Bhairava is the person who is overseeing that. And he is also the master of all the bija mantrams, not the complex one. His worship is very funny. They keep going pum pum pum, chum chum chum, yum yum yum, lum lum lum. Because they understand that the meaning of the mantras are not important. How each syllable resonates within you is what is important. I have explained that many times. I am not getting into that again. But also, in yoga, death doesn't happen because Yama comes. We say that Yama is the god of death. He is not. He is the god of karma. Yama is the person who assigns your karmic allotment to you, who judges you on what you have done, good or bad. Death happens in the yogic mindset when Shiva comes for you. Actually, when Kaala Bhairava comes for you and the Kundalini abandons you, leaps out of the body. I have been spending 70 years unappreciated and unused time to leave this person. Go to Shiva. So we know that in the yogic principle it is very clear that death happens because Kaala Bhairava comes for you. It's not a, so that's something that the knowledge, but this is the extraordinary thing, because this is what holds life together. He is also the Lord of knowledge. Knowledge flows from Kaala Bhairava, because whatever is needed to enhance the quality of life comes from Kaala Bhairava. So in a very important sense, all the issues of life that you need to fix before you can get on with transforming yourself, he does. Now his puja is not very popular, because if you see the average Bhairava Murti, you have little palpitation only. Especially the one in the Arunachalam Agni Tattva Linga temple, that one is like a really uncompromising guy. It's like, okay, you want to shift, I'll shift you. And most people, after he is at it for about a couple of weeks, they're like, okay, this is more than we bargained for. So that is the That is the tamasic aspect. But you see, the problem that we make in our spirituality, it's very common mistake today, that people try to fix their tamasic problems with a sattvic solution. It doesn't work. Not unless you are willing to abandon everything. If you are living within society, if you are living, having a family, job, whatever, the tamasic solution has to be fixed at a tamasic level only, even though it is Akasha, no doubt. You cannot solve a problem like that by becoming more display spirituality, or by, you cannot just increase the number of mantras you do and say automatically that will solve it. No, it doesn't. Because even the mantra that has to be given to you, that is the reason why you need a guru. That is the reason why you need to be in parampara. Because somebody who knows these things can advise you. Otherwise, people take up sattvic mantras for a tamasic problem. Marriage is not happening and they start doing some sattvic mantra, not going to work. So, in that sense, they thought it all out. The Siddha yogis thought it all out. Right, people are not going to be able to just make do with the Shivalingam. They are not going to be able to use the Kshetram, because Chidambaram exists. People can go and sit in Chidambaram and drop everything if they want. But people are not able to do that. So then they had to make a Shivalingam. Then they had to make even a Nataraja there. So the next stage, the Rajasic stage, the active, healthy stage, the socially healthy person, the person who has relationships, the person who has work in the world, the person who is finding and living out his swadharma, his enteleki, Nataraja, the Rajasic, the active principle. This actually is called the Nataraja, but it's not the Nataraja, it is the Ananda Tandava Murti. The Tandava, the Murti that is displaying the Tandava of Ananda, the bliss dancer. He is so perfectly integrated into what he is doing that he is in bliss. Natarajas, there are 108. There are 108 different forms of the dancing Shiva. Those are the Natarajas. Those 108 Karanas are 108 spiritual practices. And 108 stages of life and 108 stages of attainment. Those who know can take one look at the Karana, at that particular rupam of Nataraja, and say, okay, this is the sadhana that needs to be done, this is what it will accomplish, this is where it will take me. And this is the pinnacle. So in South India, the Ananda Tandava Murti is always there. And the greatest temple on Nataraja is Chidambaram. But Chidambaram is not really a Nataraja temple. That's a compromise that they have made. Chidambaram is pure and simple Akasha Kshetra. The entire zone is just Akasha Kshetram, but it's too much for people. People can't comprehend or tolerate or in any way engage with the magnitude of what is available there. So they had to step it down and create a Nataraja for people to engage with. And the Chidambaram Nataraja is the most calm and peaceful family man, very loving. It's the very most peaceful Murti I have seen. I've never seen any he's so happy. He comes out. In all other temples, they have a separate Murti for the processions on festivals. He comes out. he leaves the Garbhagriha and comes out, See, so the thing is, the world in yoga, it has a very interesting word for the world. The world is called Jagat. That which moves is the world. Whatever is moving, whatever has life, whatever has motion, whatever is kinetic is the world. Which is why the best form of movement is dance. So he is the world. The Nataraja is the world. So one of the Lingayats, Basavana, very famous, he had said, things which stand shall fall, things which move shall endure. Because if you are standing, you have already become inert, you have already become lifeless. And things which move. So here, he is moving all the time. The whole, the process is, you see, when we look at these murtis, there is so much complex symbolism in them. A person who is aware of these things can, just by contemplating on the Nataraja, he can draw out, okay, what do I need to do next in my sadhana? What do I need to do next in my process? What do I need to... I won't get into all that because all those are not supposed to be said publicly. Those are all in teaching. It happens in teaching. But the fact is, nothing is done for decorative reasons. Nothing is done. Each and every one, how the hand is, this is the Gajahasta, this is the elephant. The hand is supposed to droop like the trunk of an elephant. That has certain vibrational meaning, that has certain cultural meaning, that has certain spiritual practice meaning. All those things has, the way the hand is, what angle is the hand. You'll see that the angle is very different in many murtis, and all that has certain meaning for the people who are initiated. For the people, even if you are not initiated, if you are fortunate enough to do enough yoga, after a while you take one look and what happens called samyama. It breaks through. What is samyama? Samyama's exact definition, it's an interesting one. The intuitive knowledge gained through contemplation on the visible object. That is the yogic definition. That if you contemplate on what is visible, you get an intuitive knowledge, a deeper knowledge of what it means. So a lot of teaching in yoga is like, I'll keep telling you everything. The teacher gets tired after a while and says, think about it, meditate about it. So a murti, these kind of complex murtis were created so that a person with a certain rise in consciousness, with a certain rise in prana shakti, with a certain rise in ki, could automatically decode what is going on within the murti and learn what they needed to learn. So in that sense, there is what is called apasmara. He is dancing on a dwarf. Smarana means to remember, apasmara means to forget. So the enemy of consciousness is forgetfulness. Always one needs to be aware, and the whole point of yoga is to keep increasing your dimension of awareness until even in your sleep you are aware. The most fantastic breakthrough you get, it's not very important but it's very exciting, when you are meditating and you realize you've fallen asleep but you can see yourself. Very often you can hear yourself snore and you're like, okay, that's me snoring. So that aspect of you has become awake. The sakshi has become awake. The witness has become awake. The body has gone to sleep. Let it sleep. No, you are not the body, you are not the mind. There is something beyond the body and the mind that wakes up, which is why he dances always on that apasmara. He dances always. This person doesn't have apasmara because he is not yet at that level of evolution. This is for all the nitty-gritties of life. He is not yet. That person has moved, has become more sophisticated, has become more. So it's an interesting step. It's an interesting way in which they were taking the people forward. Because there would be festivals, there would be dances, there would be stories. The culture was still integrated, the culture was still living. Today we have come to the situation that I have to sit and explain these things. Nobody understands. And after you get through that, after you get through your entire life cycle, you've had your children, your grandchildren, that's when you come to the third stage, the sattvic stage, the pure stage, that is called the Dakshinamurti. The south facing god. Dakshinamurti means the south facing god. He is always sitting under a tree, but if you notice, he also has the apasmara. He also has the demon of amnesia. He is also holding the demon of amnesia under his. So he has stopped dancing. These are the 4 rishis. They are all called Sanat, and they and they are the 4 rishis to whom the knowledge of the Vedas were first revealed. But this murti is very interesting because after his head on fire during Kaala Bhairava, after wearing the crown of the king when he is Nataraja, now he's got Jata Mukuta. He's let his hair grow out and his crown is hair, Jata Mukuta, and he doesn't speak anymore. He teaches in silence. This is for the ultra specialist yogi. The person who can just sit next to the Guru and doesn't need to be told anything, can just draw. Ganpati Muni and Ramana Maharshi, for instance. Ganpati Muni could actually hear the words coming out of Ramana when he would sit in silence. So this teacher teaches in silence. He is the ultimate. He is the expert's expert, the Guru's Guru. So very few people get to the point of Dakshinamurti. Very few people get to that sattvic point because it flows from such a place. It flows from such a place that you have to earn it. There is no way that you can open the door and walk through or make a donation and walk through. You have to earn it. And you know, the story, the origin stories of how much tapasya those 4 rishis did is pretty gruesome, you know, like he made them sweat and sweat and sweat before he told them. But the person has come into a sort of complete naturalness, which is why he's always under the tree. He has become completely natural. He has become completely real. He has become almost, there is hardly anything holding him together now. The Akasha Tattva is in full scale there. So the Dakshinamurti is something that you don't see in any other part of the country. You see it only in South India. And you see it only where the Siddha Yogis. But it is the Guru of Guru, and the physical representation or the physical form of Dakshinamurti is the hill of Arunachala. Arunachala is 430 million years old geologically. And that is the entire hill is a crystal. That is alive, and that is Dakshinamurti. So it's still there for those who know how to access it. Those who don't know how to access it, all right. But this gradation, they understood that because people will not be able to renounce everything and throw themselves into sadhana. They understood that it would take a full life to come to that, because the aim in our culture is always, no matter what you do, you must be enlightened and liberated at the end of it. Mukti. Path is up to you, up to your vasana samskara, up to your karma, up to what is possible, but at the end you should have a reasonable shot at attaining mukti. So they created this entire template, they created this entire life path. Because you would have children and they couldn't go to Nataraja, they had to go to Bhairava. And when you were like a grandfather, finally you would have come to Dakshinamurti. You know, so if you are in the world, people will be at different places. If you are in the world, people will be at different places. So there's something that is alive, a kshetram that is alive. So in the temples, usually the central murti is always the Nataraja, because that is what people want. They want something to do with life and everything. There will always be a Dakshinamurti, you just need to look for it. Because those who want that, they can get that also. And there will always be a Bhairava, but he'll be in the corner. He will also, because Bhairava, a lot of occult stuff happens, you see. A lot of occult stuff happens. This you come when you've done enough years of sadhana, 10, 20, 30 years of sadhana, and if it is a properly energized murti, I can tell you they talk, and I can tell you they teach. But it comes beyond concepts, it comes beyond mind, it comes beyond words, it comes beyond time. It is insane. But what flows when you can access that zone, when that Akashic, Akash Ganga you heard, no? They keep saying Akash Ganga, that's what it means. It flows from his head. That zone of transformating energy flows from his head. That's the Akash Ganga. It's not Ganga coming to sweep Shiva off his feet. You know? To get to that, it takes an enormous amounts. So then after doing this, they said, okay, in a life a person needs 3 jaya, 3 victories. There are 3 victories or 3 things you have to overcome. So don't worry, I am getting to the end of it. Yeah, those who are getting pakawed can take relief. Not that I particularly care, but I am just throwing that bone out. Yeah. So the 3 victories This is very interesting, because I have seen this only in the Siddha Yogas. They actually do not believe that the average person has even an individuality. They say that you have to create a Swarupa. Most of us have what is called a Sarupa, that is a socially given identity. Because that's where we are born, that's the name our parents gave us, that's our gender, that's our education. All that is Sarupa, and they say first job that a person in the path is to create an identity that is their own. That is the Swarupa. Who will do that for you? Bhairava will do that. Once you get that identity or that personality, you can call it a personality if you wish, because you know the old yogic game, no? Like, who are you? This is my name. No, that's your name. Who are you? This is what I do. No, that's what you do. Who are you? So that kind of game. The second Jaya, that victory itself is very difficult, and it's very interesting to me that early part of the 20th century, that crazy guy Gurdjieff, that Russian chappie, bald with the big mustaches, yeah, he actually said that people need to create a soul. Most people are born without souls. So he was, analogously, he had discovered the same idea of the Siddha Yogis, that most people really don't have anything authentic that is theirs, it is all given. So the next thing is, you need to offer that created Swarupa to the divine. Today we were doing the Havan, and the last Havan, what do we do? After all that chanting and all that effort for 1.5 hours, here God, all to you. You need to. So the next victory, which is immensely difficult because most people defend what they have worked so hard to create. Most people are very happy with what they have become, especially if they've attained some money and they've attained some fame. Then they are fixed in concrete. They find it very difficult to break free of that. But you have to take your entire individuality, you have to take your entire Swarupa, you have to take your entire personality, and you have to offer it. Because that also might be apasmara, and let Shiva dance on your head little bit. let him, Ananda Tandava Murti, let him dance little bit on you. That is the second victory, and trust me, that probably is even bigger problem than. And the third victory, the last Jaya, is that the Akasha Tattva starts flowing, the Shiva energy starts working in you, and the divine starts transforming you into its own self. Now this is the very clear path that the yogis have laid out. This is the goal of all human life. You are to find that divine spark in the end within you, and that is all our Mahavakyas are that. Now those who know the Vedanta, they all know that in the end there is no difference. That is Dakshinamurti. The third Jaya, the most difficult, even the second Jaya nobody gets to. People spend lifetimes just creating a personality, just creating a Swarupa for themselves. The second Jaya, after all this effort, all this success, all this fame, all this adoration from everybody, now I have to give it up. No, surely there must be a mistake in the matter. I find it all the time, Santosh also, I'm not saying, it's an occupational hazard. People come, we think you can help us. Please help me. Okay, what do you want? Here is a script. And now help me according to these stages. Yeah, make all these things happen. Then you have helped me. Otherwise, you are useless. I was mistaken about you. Yeah. They have come. The first Vijaya has happened. The first Jaya, the first victory has happened. They have got some rudimentary sense of Swarupa, and they know this won't do. I need to grow. I need to evolve. They know it won't do. But man, their mind is so full of clutter. Their mind is so full of concepts and books that they have read and nonsense they've seen on the internet, that after that, here, I'm hiring you to be the director of my script. I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to act in it. You know, the dialogues are already all written. You just please make sure that I don't stray out of frame. You know, you can't come to a person you think is a teacher and start giving instructions to that person. Now that's obvious to everybody except the most mentally retarded. But you know what to do. So that even to come there, even to come to the point where you say, very good, I have Swarupa, it won't do. The Swarupa is also an artificial construct. The Swarupa is also something that I have created. It might not be the most authentic that I can be. That is why you need the Nataraja, because you know he is not so harsh as the Bhairava, but the Nataraja can be pretty tough also. By the time you come to accessing Dakshinamurti, I have no more to say, because if you have come to that space, you're doing fine. You know, you don't need any advice there. Which is why there's hardly any literature on the Dakshinamurti. There are hardly any temples where he is the main. They don't want him to be the main, because a temple like that will shut shop in 2 years' time. There won't be enough people coming there and accessing it or getting the benefit from that place. There are very, very few temples. I don't think there is any, in fact. Dakshinamurti is always like a niche product, you know, within the larger. So, in that sense, even though they created these forms, and I have been speaking now for 45 minutes, still they all know this is what counts. This formlessness, this primordial form, this first vibration, this base of consciousness, that is what they call Shiva. So it is not a sectarian thing that they say when they say that no matter what form you pray to, in the end the prayer goes to Shiva. That is not what they mean. You know, there is a very famous Sanskrit saying that the water that falls from the sky, it inevitably flows to the sea. So too, any prayer to any god, it flows to Shiva. They don't mean Shiva the person, or they don't mean even Nataraja or Dakshinamurti, though it would help. But they just mean that auspicious consciousness, the aspiration to transform is always geared to Shiva. The sadhana that you do is always geared to Shiva. The prayers that you rise, it always goes to auspicious consciousness. Akshat patitam toyam sagaram pratigacchati sarvadeva namaskaram shivo pratigacchati. Sarvam Shivamaya.